Good afternoon. My name is Christie, and I'm here to share my story with you. It was only 5 short summers ago that I was sitting in a convention center very similar to this one in Austin, Texas, and I was listening to the keynote speaker and thinking, what in the heck does this have to do with me? I teach science, not AVID. Fast forward 5 years, and now it's my job to help you understand why you've been asked to come here. Several of you were asked, maybe as recently as yesterday, or more told than asked, you will go to this training and you will enjoy it. Others of you have had a little bit of experience with AVID, but this is your first time at an institute and you're really excited to find out more. And still others of you are here for the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th time, more years than I've been here, and you can't wait to see what this year has to offer. Regardless of your experience with AVID, you are going to spend the next 5 days completely immersed in it. So I'm here to explain to you why I think that's something worth getting excited about. And I hope by the time I'm done, you'll feel the same way I do. But Norman Vincent Peale, a motivational speaker, had some very good advice that I plan to adhere to. He said, be interesting, be enthusiastic, and don't talk too much. I'll do my best. AVID. Advancement via individual determination. Individually determined to be advanced. Taking hold of life and letting it take you where you want to go, instead of allowing your circumstances to dictate your future. AVID is a mindset, and I believe that the way we set our minds determines our future. I would like to start with a beautiful, energetic young woman named Darian. She was ready to tackle the world, but she wasn't exactly sure where to start. She was okay with hanging out with people who were okay with mediocrity. She wasn't quite ready to take that next step. In fact, Darian tried pretty hard to get out of AVID, but she didn't seem to think that she needed it until she took that first AP class, and it rocked her world. It wasn't long after that Darian was being asked to go to high schools and middle schools all over our county to convince kids that they needed to do more, that they had options. Darian will be attending Florida A&M University in the fall. Woohoo! Go Rattlers! And she's living a dream that she's had since her freshman year. I can promise you that Darian is far from average. Alan, who is dear to my heart, was painfully quiet. Alan wanted to fly under the radar. He was very comfortable not being noticed. He knew what was going on in class, but the last thing he wanted to do was for somebody to point him out or point out that he knew what was going on. Alan was quoted his senior year as saying, AVID has helped me not to become just a statistic. I can promise you that Alan will never be just a statistic. AJ was a really great kid. He had a smile that would absolutely brighten a room. When he came to me his freshman year, he said, Miss McMullen, you are crazy if you think I can take an honors class. I said, we'll do it together, AJ. You'll be okay. His sophomore year, he came to me with his schedule, and he had all honors in 1 AP class on there. He said, is this okay? I said, yes, AJ, that's okay. AJ didn't have any confidence when he stepped into my room. In fact, he wanted to die before he would speak in front of people. Now, I think AJ is one of the most brave and amazing young men in this country. He is going to be in the U.S. Army, and he will be a combat engineer in the fall, and I couldn't be any more proud. I'm a little flustered talking about my kids because unbeknownst to me, 2 of my dear friends brought Alan and Darian with them this morning, so I'd like for them to stand and be recognized. My first-year AVID students came into my room absolutely unsure why they were there, but they were pretty positive that that was not where they wanted to be. On June 1st, 2009, they walked across the stage and received their high school diploma, and that, I know, will not be the most amazing thing that those kids ever accomplish. In fact, they walked across that stage and said, I'm ready for more. The plans for my own future, that future with options, was never foggy to me. I knew exactly what I wanted to do from the time I was 6 years old. When I stepped into a kindergarten classroom, I said, I want to be a teacher, and I meant it. I started out lining all my stuffed animals up And I put them in rows because we didn't know about collaborative groups way back then. I continued on that track, and when I got into high school, my future became very clear. I was going to teach high school biology, and I was going to be that teacher that other students really needed, the voice of reason, the one that pushed them to be more than they currently were, the teacher who cares. I had no idea, however, how my plan would actually unfold. I never could have predicted the twists and turns that my career took, but I did know one thing. I was going to teach my heart out and do everything I could to make sure that the students left my room knowing more than they entered knowing. And I think that deep down, when you peel off all the layers, every single one of you feels the same way. You want your kids to know more when they leave than they did when they came. My first few years teaching were an absolute whirlwind. I was a very green, 22-year-old young woman teaching in an inner-city school near Charlotte, North Carolina. I was facing 15-year-old mothers of 3-year-olds, drug dealers, and 20-year-old seniors who were taking the scenic 6-year route through high school. But I refused to back down. It was that year that one young man in particular really shaped my future. I will never forget T.Y. T.Y. was on his 3rd senior year. He sat in the back and worked extremely hard at doing absolutely nothing. He very simply breathed my air. I saw that he had so much more to offer, so I pushed and I prodded and I fussed and I called home and I did all the things a good teacher does. And one day, after another discussion with this young man, he said to me, "Miss McMullen, you try too hard. Some of us just don't want more." Wow, he might as well have punched me in the stomach. I couldn't believe that anybody didn't want more. I was an intrinsically motivated student, the one that wanted to go to class and wanted to be there and wanted to get more out of life. But this kid's biggest desire in life was to graduate from high school and get on welfare so that he could just chill. Those were his words. I couldn't understand how anybody didn't want more, but I refused to let anybody else leave my classroom without knowing the importance of having more. I was the first in my family to receive a college degree, but I knew what I was going to do from the very beginning. The pushing didn't have to happen. I just had it. I wanted what I wanted, and I was going to go get it. But even though I knew I wanted to go to college, I left high school clueless, embarrassingly clueless. I didn't know how to take notes. I didn't know how to read a textbook. I certainly didn't know that I was supposed to reread the notes that I took in class before studying for the test. None of that. So I refused to let any student feel the same way when they left. I made it my personal mission to make sure that all of my students understood the importance of having those options after graduation, which is why, even though it was science class, my kids were forever asking me questions like, "Why does spelling count? This isn't English, this is science." Or, "Why do we have to write all these essays? Why do we have to create test questions for the test that you're going to create?" And I just answered them with, "These are life lessons, not school lessons. You'll be all right." Author and motivational speaker Brian Tracy said, "You cannot control what happens to you, but you can control your attitude towards what happens to you. And in that, you will be mastering change rather than allowing it to master you." Most of the time, my teaching circumstances were less than ideal. Whether it was teaching science in 3 different classrooms and dissecting frogs in 3 different classrooms in the same day because I didn't rank high enough to have my own classroom, or teaching in a portable and having AP Environmental Science with no running water and 35 kids. Whatever the case, I learned to adapt. But I got another wake-up call from my students when they started sharing with me their stories, their circumstances, the fighting at home, the lack of food, the inability to do what they wanted to do because they were taking care of the rest of their family. All those circumstances really started to overwhelm me. But then I realized something. I couldn't control their circumstances, but I could control how I reacted to them, and they could control how they reacted to those circumstances. They could use them as opportunities, or they could choose to see them as roadblocks. We worked hard together to make sure that they were opportunities. I've always tried very hard to find the good in situations and in people, and I asked the same of my students. I would start every class with good things, things that were happening to them that were worth mentioning. And we did that so that they would learn to focus on the good rather than the bad, because we do always have 2 options, and this is what I told them. You can walk in this store and spend 85 minutes with me grumbling and complaining about what you don't want to do, or you can spend those same 85 minutes with me enjoying yourself. Choice is yours. Typically, after time, they learned to choose wisely and enjoy themselves. John Wooden, UCLA's basketball coach, said, "Don't let what you cannot do interfere with what you can." I know that my sister-in-law, Tiffany, was put on this planet to teach me that lesson in a very powerful way. Tiffany was a bright, wonderful young lady who had the whole world in front of her, and at 10 years old, she complained to her father that she couldn't see peripherally. Come to find out, Tiffany had a brain tumor located on her optic nerve. They operated, and they got most of it, but unfortunately, the tumor was stubborn and it grew back. At the age of 14, Tiffany had to have a second brain surgery, and when she did, it left her with no short-term memory and continuing physical ailments. I cannot tell you how many times Tiffany was hospitalized for pneumonia, or for complications from a surgery, or to have a stomach feeding tube put in, or to have a tracheotomy because she could no longer breathe on her own. But if you ask Tiffany how she was, in any of those times when she's hooked up to IVs and uncomfortable and in pain, Tiffany would say, "I am terrific," and she would give you thumbs up. It didn't matter how sick she really was. Well, most of us would whine and complain if our teenage years had been cut short and we'd been left completely reliant on our parents for the rest of our lives, but not Tiff. She was too determined to live life to worry about her sickness. I can think of 4 different occasions in the last 10 years when we went in to say our final goodbyes to Tiffany because the doctor said there absolutely was no hope. Tiffany had some living left to do, and so we always knew she was going to be okay because she would continue to give us that thumbs up. Tiffany did finally get to go home to be with the Lord on April 26, 2009, but not before she taught us some pretty major lessons. She had a massive stroke at the young age of 34, and yet even in the very, very end, when she had a brain tumor and collapsed lungs and the inability to walk, she still managed to give us thumbs up. I believe that Tiffany lived her life to teach us all a lesson in perseverance. We would all do well to have a little tough tiff attitude in our classrooms. If we would make a conscious effort to shift our focus from the cannots onto the cans, the results would be amazing. We can't control many of our circumstances, like budget cuts or overcrowded classrooms or lack of discipline in a school, but we can choose what we focus on: our attitude, our ability to engage students, and our passion. I can't say that a positive attitude does not promise an easy road, though. That's not the case. Just when you think you've mastered finding the good, life hits you with a full-on challenge. When I moved to Florida, I took a job teaching biology and Foundations of School Success. Now, I don't know if your school has Foundations of School Success or not, but that was the class they designed for all freshmen to take, and here was my curriculum: teach them to be good people and to survive high school. Done. No big task there, right? I was literally given 37 kids at a time for 85 minutes at a time, and that was my curriculum. No book, no nothing, go. Well, I'll be honest, I was very excited about it at first. I'm going to teach them to take good notes. I'm going to do all the things that I think they should know, and they're going to be great to each other. It'll be awesome. Okay, so I really thought that freshmen were still moldable and that we could change their minds on how they do things. I'm going to let you in on my philosophy in life. Freshmen should be locked in a box and left there until they're no longer freshmen. That year, I almost quit teaching altogether. I realized that I had nothing to hold over their heads. I had to learn how to create credibility in their eyes. I had to convince them that what I said had merit, and I had to think back to TY and remember that not every student is intrinsically motivated like I am. I had to completely transform my teaching style, my personality, and become the teacher that those students needed. Because I realized that students like me, who have that innate ability, don't need the teachers to push them. It's all the rest of the kids that need us to explain why we do what we do. At the end of that fateful year, my assistant principal came to me and she said, "Would you like to help start this new program called AVID?" My question was, do I have to work with freshmen? She said yes, and I said no thank you. She followed me around for about a week and said, please, please, this will be great. There's already a curriculum made up and you've got all this built-in support and there are teachers all over the country that do it. So I said, all right, I'll try it. My first year working with AVID was by far my most frustrating and my most rewarding teaching career. I had a room full of Darians and Allens and AJs, a room full of students who could but weren't really sure they wanted to, a room full of students who had it but were scared to death of it, a room full of doubtful and scared to be hopeful teens who were put out on a limb and weren't even sure why they were in the tree yet. We struggled, we laughed, we cried, I yelled, and we learned. It's been said that when you're through changing, you're through. We did an awful lot of changing that year, but our basic goals remained the same. We were going to do everything in our power to have all the tools necessary so that when we hit life, we hit the ground running and we're capable of doing whatever we wanted to do. That's what AVID is. It's a mindset that everything we do prepares us for our future. So why not plan to be as prepared as possible? I really thought it was my job to teach those kids that year, but in reality, we really taught each other. Together, we learned things like how to look people in the eye and shake hands with them when you meet them for the first time. We learned that when somebody pays you a compliment, you should say thank you and not, ooh, my hair looks awful. We learned how to confront an adult and ask them and challenge them on something without coming across looking like a brat. And we learned that asking questions was the best way to learn, and that if you don't ever ask, you won't ever know. After teaching the elective for 2 years, I felt like I was finally starting to figure it out. Just a little slow. Took me a while. I now knew that a tutorial should look a certain way and that putting on makeup or studying for the test the next day or whatever wasn't really what it was supposed to look like. I learned the importance of binder checks and the fact that they should take place more than once a semester and we should actually look frequently. And I learned what would change in a kid's eyes when they set foot on a college campus for the first time and saw it for themselves and realized that they could be a part of that. And then I got a phone call. Our AVID district director called to ask me if I would like to take his place because he'd been promoted to director of advanced studies. What? I can't leave the classroom. I'm just starting to figure out this teaching thing. There's no way I can go do something else. I really struggled with this decision because it wasn't my plan. But I had been preaching at my kids for a long time about options and the fact that they needed to pursue all their options. This was an option I am so thankful that I pursued. I humbly accepted the position and was employed as the manager for the Advanced Placement Incentive Program grant. And basically our job was to increase the number of kids that were taking advanced and honors classes, specifically ethnically diverse and low socioeconomic kids. Well, AVID was the perfect fit. So we put AVID in 11 schools throughout our district. I was no longer responsible for 100 to 150 kids. Now I was responsible for kids in 4 high schools and 7 middle schools. What an honor, what a challenge. What in the heck am I doing? I had no idea what I was doing. With this new challenge came new experiences, new training, and again, new opportunities. I was able to be trained by the AVID Center as a district director, and later I was chosen as a staff developer. It's now my job to teach teachers to do what I did in my classroom. I cannot think of a more amazingly fulfilling honor than to be able to encourage teachers that attitude really is everything, and that kids are really eager to be challenged as long as they're supported in that challenge. I've gone from stuffed animals to high school kids, to amazingly talented fellow educators. I know now, too, to use collaborative groups. When I was asked to speak today, I was told that it was my goal to motivate you to get excited about the week to come. But it has been said that motivation doesn't last. Well, let me let you in on a little secret. Neither does bathing, which is why it should be done daily. We all need to be motivated continuously, and the best way to do that is to surround yourself with other like-minded people, like the people in this room, and help yourself realize that it can't be done alone, but if you're daily motivated to do more, you will succeed, which is exactly what AVID does for kids. AVID surrounds other kids with positive peer pressure. It gives them the opportunity to learn more together and be motivated together. Now, Darion's going to FAMU, and she has options. Alan's going to SPC, and he is not going to be just a statistic. AJ's going to serve our country, and I believe with all my heart that he did not settle. Their willingness to step out of their comfort zone is what got them to this point in their scholastic career. And now each one of you is going to be asked to step out of your comfort zone. We're going to ask you to try new things this week. We're going to show you some new and innovative ways to get kids out of their passive role as students and into an active role in learning. We're going to use those collaborative groups and require you to actually talk to people. We're going to laugh out loud. We're going to be creative. We're going to ask you to use these strategies come fall, and we're going to leave here changed. But now, you're faced with two options. Option number one, you can look at this week as a chore. You can hear all these new and creative ways to do things that must be wrong because they're not the way you've done them before. And you can look at your staff developer or your administrator and say, Mrs. McMullen, you try too hard. Some of us don't want more. Or, option number two, you can look at this week as an opportunity, find all the positive things that can be used in your own classrooms in the fall, and you can say to your staff developer or your administrators with a true tough tiff attitude, thumbs up, I want all you can give me. Let's go change some lives. I encourage you to choose wisely. Let's have an amazing week.